couple of weeks ago, a Unitarian Universalist minister friend of mine posted the following news clipping on her Facebook feed. And this is the story that was shared. The headline said, "Missing Woman Mystery Solved." A group of tourists spent our Saturday night looking for a missing woman near Iceland's Eldridge Canyon, only to find her among the search party. The group was traveling through Iceland on a tour bus and stopped near a volcanic canyon. Soon there was word of a missing passenger. The woman, who had changed clothes, didn't recognize the description of herself and joined in the search. But the search was called off at about 3 a.m. when it became clear the missing woman was in fact accounted for and searching for herself. Now, being in a similar line of work as me, my minister friend posted the comment, "I think there must be a sermon in this," to which I said, "I know that there's a High Holy Day sermon in this." One might focus only on the practicalities of the situation. Did the tour leaders not know how many travelers were on their bus? For those who have traveled on a high school trip with me, Debbie, or Rabbi Joe, or one of our congregational trips to Israel or Cuba with me and Rabbi Lisa Iderson, you'll know about the practice of counting off. For those on our last trip to Israel, we will forever associate Sally Lipschitz with her exuberant pronouncement of "Chai" every time it was her turn, having been gifted with the number 18. You could say it was a highlight of our time together. Anyway, I could tell you that the moral of this story is always know how many are on your bus. Apparently, it could save you hours of pointless searching. And then I could sit down, and it would be the shortest High Holy Day sermon ever delivered. And some of you might applaud that. But others of you might feel disappointed that they'd made the effort to come on not 1, but 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, and the least the rabbi could do was make a little bit of an effort with the sermon. So let's go a little bit deeper. Because like any good rabbinic interpretation, there are many more insights that we could extract from this story if we turn it into a modern-day parable. Within the enormous corpus of Jewish folk tales and rabbinic stories, we will find no shortage of examples of tales that are about the call to know ourselves. The most famous is probably the Hasidic tale that was reshared and made famous through the tellings of Martin Buber. Once the Hasidic Rabbi Zusia came to his followers with tears in his eyes. They asked him, "Zusia, what's the matter?" And he told them about his vision. "I learned the question that the angels will one day ask me about my life." And the followers were puzzled. "Zusia, you are pious, you are scholarly and humble. You have helped so many of us. What question about your life could be so terrifying that you would be frightened to answer it?" Zusia replied, "I have learned that the angels will not ask me, 'Why weren't you a Moses leading your people out of slavery?' And the angels will not ask me, 'Why weren't you a Joshua leading your people into the promised land?' Zusia sighed. They will say to me, 'Zusia, why weren't you Zusia?'" That famous story, I think, is all about authenticity. In the true story made parable of the tourist in Iceland who was searching for herself, she was not recognized by the others on the bus, and neither did she recognize the description of her thought-to-be-lost self, because she had changed her clothes. Who she was, her authentic, beneath-the-surface self, had not changed. Only the outer layers, the ones that were visible to others to see. I think a lot about the youth in our community. I watch many of them struggle in the preteen and early teen years, trying to figure out who they are. Some desperately seek to fit in and belong, the tug for wearing whatever the latest brand of clothing or shoe is, impart an outer layer that connotes belonging and fitting in when we feel painfully aware that we're not actually just like everyone else, but we fear our uniqueness being used as the bully's prodding stick, and so we do our best to hide our authentic selves. And then there are those teens who make it look like everything is just fine on the outside, while inside they're struggling with anxiety and feelings of despair. Even a loving and attentive parent can't see what a child does not reveal to them. Help only becomes available when the authentic self discards the outer layers to reveal where they really are at. When a child reveals that they're carrying such a heavy burden, it is heartbreaking. We who have come through our own difficult life stages and with the benefit of the long view ache for the distress that they feel until they are able to see beyond the immediate to the expansive vistas that lie ahead. That's why a dozen years ago, a project like the It Gets Better campaign was so important. Started by Dan Savage, people who were LGBTQ were encouraged to post a video of their coming out story and the positive, beautiful things in their lives. The goal was to provide a resource for young people who were struggling with their sexual orientation or gender identity, or feeling ostracized or rejected because of who they were. In the facing of dramatically higher rates of suicide and attempted suicide among LGBTQ teens, the videos provided a way of virtually holding their hands to help them peel away the outer layers so that they could live their authentic lives, not in fear, but with pride. The sociologist Brené Brown writes a lot about authenticity. She quotes Margaret Young in a chapter of the topic in her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. Let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. And the quote states, often people attempt to live their lives backwards. They try to have more things or more money in order to do more of what they want so that they'll be happier. The way it actually works is the reverse. You must first be who you really are, then do what you really need to do in order to have what you want. This speaks to the outer layers that hide our authentic selves that many of us grapple with as adults. We who live these suburban lives often measure ourselves against a set of perceived communal and cultural expectations that finds us struggling to keep up with the Joneses. Like the Facebook feeds that show only the perfect family pictures that hide the complexities of real life. We measure and assess our lives according to a set of criteria that may not be in alignment with our authentic selves. A small example, a friend who lives in my neighborhood was expressing a desire to give her front lawn over to a wildflower garden. It would be, she said, much more in keeping with the environmental values that she cared so deeply about and wanted to try and live by. Yet she was anxious about the response from her surrounding neighbors with their perfectly manicured and sprayed lawns if she let hers turn to something that was so completely visually different. Isn't that just another form of the teenager who is feeling the need to fit in by wearing clothing from the right store? But I do appreciate her dilemma. I've been there too. Cultivating authenticity is guidepost 1 in Brené Brown's book. In it she writes, authenticity is a collection of choices that we have to make every day. It's about the choice to show up and be real, the choice to be honest, the choice to let our true selves be seen. But she also acknowledges that the idea that we can choose authenticity makes most of us feel both hopeful and exhausted. Yes, we are drawn to people who are warm, down to earth, honest people. But we also know that choosing authenticity, choosing the wildflower garden over the lawn that looks like everyone else's, is a huge undertaking. And so Brené Brown defines authenticity this way. Authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. What I find so persuasive about her work is that what Brené describes here is something that is an ongoing daily practice to become more fully who we really are. It's a kind of mindfulness. It is perhaps the most spiritual kind of spiritual practice that we can engage with, one that doesn't hide behind the facade of ritual and prescribed prayers, but one where our very own souls are truly the focus. And isn't that what these high holy days are, ultimately? all about. It's not about the rituals and the sitting in services. They're just the vehicles that remind us of what we are here for. Like the woman in Iceland, we're all searching for ourselves. And in so doing, we're walking the precipice on the edge of the deep canyon. Practicing authenticity means navigating through what Brené describes as a gauntlet of gremlins. That gauntlet might include the inner voice that says things like, what if I let my imperfect self be seen and known, and nobody likes what they see? What if my friends or co-workers like the perfect me better? You know, the one who takes care of everything and everyone. If we go biblical, we might identify what she described as the gauntlet of gremlins as biblically the description of Satan, the adversarial angel that tries to get us to turn off from the path that we're meant to be on. Satan shows up in many rabbinic midrashim, trying to redirect our biblical leaders away from fulfilling their God-given mission. Only by being resolute and having courage do they succeed, despite the temptations to take an easy way out. Because there's nothing easy about this. There is no authenticity switch that we can turn on or off. Authenticity isn't always the safe option. Sometimes it's really hard to be real over being liked. There will still be cruelty in the world, so being authentic also requires a willingness to be vulnerable. So why would we choose to subject ourselves to that? Because we only have one life, and we shouldn't waste it searching for what was always right there in front of us all along. As Brené puts it, there's risk involved in putting your true self out in the world. But I believe there's even more risk in hiding yourself and your gifts from the world. Our unexpressed ideas, opinions, and contributions don't just go away. If you trade in your authenticity for safety, you may experience the following: anxiety, depression, eating disorders, addiction, rage, blame, resentment, and inexplicable grief. Sacrificing who we are for the sake of what other people think just isn't worth it. Bringing these insights back to the framework of the spiritual invitation of Rosh Hashanah, we have the gift of a wisdom tradition that offers us more than simply our own inner voice to guide us on the path. We have ethical and moral teachings, not only from Torah, but from generations of ancestors who have come before us. Should we be misguided in thinking that our authentic self is one that commits crimes or treats others harshly, we have a wisdom tradition that provides a reference guide. Torah tells us that these are commandments from God, mitzvot. They are points of connection that remind us that our authentic self is in the image of God. To be holy like God is to express our authenticity in ways that nurture compassion and connection in our lives and in the lives of others. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the rest is commentary, says Hillel the elder. And we have community. The woman who was lost didn't realize that she was searching for herself until her fellow travelers started searching. That's one of the reasons we come together as community over these high holy days. We're not alone. Each of us is a work in progress, and seeing that we're all trying can help to nurture the compassion that we need for others and for ourselves, that will help us to be vulnerable, which will in turn enable us to be more authentic with each other. The shofar is calling. Wake up. Live your most authentic life now. Don't wait until tomorrow. Shana Tova.